Hello everyone and welcome back to Shadow Man Stories. I can picture some of you already in bed, maybe some of you just getting home from work. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, I'm glad you're here. If this helps you relax or sleep, please like and subscribe. It means a lot. Now, let's get you comfortable, and I'll tell you tonight's story. My name is Michael Redstone, and I've been a ranger with the Jefferson National Forest for 20 years. I've seen a lot in those 2 decades. Bears that got too comfortable around campers, hikers who thought they could climb Mount Rogers in flip-flops, even a few folks trying to steal our wild ponies. But I never saw anything that made me question reality itself. Not until the summer of 1981. I'm 44 now, old enough to know better than to believe in ghost stories. My grandmother used to tell me tales about shadow walkers when I was a kid. Spirits that walked through fire without burning. Cherokee legends passed down for generations. I loved those stories, but I never thought they were real. I figured they were just her way of teaching me to respect the land and the old ways. My specialty is fire prevention and prescribed burns. If you don't know what that means, it's basically controlled burning. We light small fires on purpose to clear out dead grass and brush before it builds up and causes a massive wildfire. It's scientific, precise work. Everything has to be perfect. Wind speed, humidity, temperature, fuel moisture content. I've planned and executed over 300 prescribed burns without a single one getting out of control. That August, Virginia was cooking under a heat wave that wouldn't quit. We were in week 5 of temperatures over 95 degrees, and the highland meadows of Grayson Highlands were brown and crispy as toast. Every blade of grass was a potential match waiting to be struck. I was checking my equipment every morning and evening, watching the weather reports like a hawk, praying we'd get through fire season without disaster. The Grayson Highlands is beautiful country, wide open meadows at high elevation where wild ponies roam free, scattered boulder fields left behind by ancient glaciers, and twisted oak trees that look like they're bowing against invisible wind. On a clear day, you can see for miles. But that summer, the air was so thick with heat shimmer that the distant mountains seemed to ripple and dance. I was working out of the Mount Rogers Ranger Station, which is about 45 miles from the nearest fire station. When something goes wrong up there, you're on your own for at least an hour, probably longer if the roads are blocked. We had radio communication, but the mountains create shadows in the signal. Sometimes you can talk to someone 10 miles away clear as day. Other times, you can't raise anyone at all. My crew that summer was small, just me and 2 seasonal workers, plus whatever support we could call in from other districts if we needed it. But I'd worked with less. I knew the land, knew the weather patterns, knew how fire behaved in those highlands, or at least I thought I did. The first sign that something was wrong came on August 12th. I was doing my morning check of the weather instruments when I noticed something odd. 3 separate grass fires had been reported overnight, all within a 50-mile radius. That wasn't necessarily unusual during a drought. Sometimes you get lightning strikes or idiots tossing cigarettes out car windows. But there hadn't been any lightning. The weather report showed clear skies all night. I radioed dispatch. "Any reports of suspicious activity in the highlands last night?" "Negative," came the response. "Just the 3 fires. All small, all contained quickly by local crews." "Anyone determined cause?" Static crackled on the line. Then, "Unknown origin. No physical evidence at any site." That bothered me. Fire doesn't just appear out of nowhere. There's always a source. Lightning, human activity, equipment sparks. Something. I decided to take a drive up to the nearest site and have a look myself. The fire had burned out a circular patch of meadow about 30 feet across. The grass around the edges was barely singed, but the center was burned down to bare dirt. I knelt down and ran my fingers through the ash, checking for the usual clues. Cigarette butts, matches, spent fireworks, anything that might explain how it started. Nothing. The ash was fine and powdery, almost too perfect. Normal wildfire ash has bits of unburned material mixed in, seeds, stems, chunks of charcoal. This was like flour. I pulled out my thermal imaging camera and scanned the burn site. The camera shows heat signatures helping us find hot spots that might reignite. But instead of the expected warm patches, I saw something that made no sense. The center of the burn, where the fire had been hottest, was reading cooler than the surrounding unburned grass. I checked the camera, thinking the battery might be dying or the lens dirty. But no, the reading was consistent. The burned area was actually colder than it should be. "That's not right," I muttered to myself. I spent another hour examining the site, taking photos, collecting ash samples. The whole time I had this creeping feeling like someone was watching me. I kept turning around, expecting to see hikers or maybe another ranger. But the meadow was empty. Just me and the wind and that perfect circle of ash that defied everything I knew about fire behavior. When I got back to my truck, I noticed the wild ponies. Usually they graze all over the highlands, barely noticing humans. But today they were all clustered together near the tree line, about half a mile from where I stood. Even from that distance, I could see they were agitated, tossing their heads and stamping. Animals know things we don't. My grandmother taught me that. When the ponies act strange, you pay attention. I drove to the second fire site that afternoon. Same story. Perfect circle, impossible ash, cold temperature readings. The third site would have to wait until tomorrow. By then the sun was setting, painting the highlands in shades of orange and red that looked too much like fire for my comfort. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those burn patterns, about the cold centers where there should have been heat, about the way the ponies had clustered together like they were seeking protection, about my grandmother's stories of shadow walkers moving through flames. At 3 a.m., my radio crackled to life. "Ranger Redstone, we've got multiple fire reports. You need to see this." I was out of bed and in my truck in 5 minutes. As I drove up the mountain road toward the highlands, I saw something that made my blood run cold. 7 fires burning in the darkness spread across the meadows in a pattern that was impossible to mistake. From my elevated position on the road, I could see they formed a perfect geometric shape, a 7-pointed star, each fire blazing at one of the points. Fire doesn't arrange itself. Fire spreads from a source, following fuel and wind. It doesn't create patterns. It doesn't form shapes. But these fires did. I called in every available crew within 100 miles. By dawn, we had 30 firefighters on the ground, attacking the blazes with everything we had. But something was wrong with these fires. They weren't behaving the way fire should behave. The wind was blowing from the west at 15 miles per hour. I checked my instruments twice to be sure. Fire spreads with the wind, always. It's basic physics. But these fires were spreading east to west, directly against the wind. I watched flames crawl backward across dry grass like they had minds of their own. "Chief," one of my crew called out. He was a good kid named Tommy, 22 years old, built like a linebacker. He'd been fighting fires for 3 seasons and knew his stuff. "Chief, you need to see this." I jogged over to where he stood at the edge of one of the fires. He pointed to his handheld weather station. "Look at the temperature reading." The digital display showed 187 degrees F Fahrenheit, and he was standing in an area where the grass wasn't even scorched yet. The fire was 20 feet away, but the temperature where we stood should have been maybe 95 degrees tops. "Equipment malfunction?" I suggested, knowing it wasn't. "I checked it 3 times. The weird part is," he walked 10 feet to the left into an area where the fire had already passed through, where the grass was blackened and smoking. He held up the weather station. "Here it's only 78 degrees. That was impossible. Freshly burned ground stays hot for hours, sometimes days. You can restart a fire from coals that look completely dead, but this burned grass was cool to the touch. I radioed Dr. Anna Clearwater, our fire meteorologist who worked out of the Virginia Tech campus. Anna was brilliant. She could predict fire behavior better than anyone I'd ever met. If anyone could explain what we were seeing, it would be her. "Anna, I'm sending you some data that doesn't make sense. Temperature readings that are backward, fires spreading against the wind, burn patterns that look deliberate." There was a long pause, then, "Michael, are you sure your equipment is functioning?" "I'm sure." Another pause. I'm coming up there. Don't let anyone leave those fire sites. I need to see this myself. While we waited for Anna, I walked the perimeter of the star pattern. Each fire was positioned exactly the same distance from its neighbors. I measured with my rangefinder. The precision was unnerving. At the center of the star, where all 7 points would meet if you drew lines between them, I found something I hadn't noticed before. A circle of stones. Old stones, weathered and moss-covered, arranged in a ring about 6 feet across. I recognized it immediately, a Cherokee sacred circle, probably hundreds of years old. My grandmother had shown me pictures of similar formations. These were ceremonial sites, places where the old people conducted rituals and honored the spirits of the land. "Tommy," I called out, "get a photo of this." As Tommy jogged over, or with the camera, I knelt down to examine the stones more closely. They were warm, much warmer than they should be from the ambient air temperature. And in the center of the circle, the grass was completely undamaged, bright green and healthy, while everything around it for 100 yards was either burning or already burned. "That's weird," Tommy said, snapping photos. "It's like the fire went around it on purpose." "Fire doesn't have purpose," I said automatically. But even as I spoke the words, I didn't believe them anymore. By mid-morning, Anna arrived in her Virginia Tech van, packed with monitoring equipment. She set up weather stations at each of the 7 fire points, taking readings of temperature, humidity, wind speed, barometric pressure, everything. I could see her frowning at her instruments, checking them, recalibrating, checking again. "This is wrong," she finally said. "All of it. The pressure readings are fluctuating wildly. I'm seeing changes of 1/2 inch of mercury in a matter of seconds. That doesn't happen unless there's a massive storm system moving through and the sky is perfectly clear." "What about the temperature inversions?" "Those are even worse. Michael, I'm reading temperature gradients that would require—" She trailed off, shaking her head. "There's no natural explanation. It's like there's a heat source and a cold source occupying the same space." One of the crew shouted. We both turned to see him pointing at the nearest fire. The flames had suddenly changed color. Instead of the normal orange and yellow, they were burning a deep blue, like a gas stove flame. But there was no gas, just dry grass. "Get everyone back," I ordered. "Nobody goes near those fires until we understand what's happening." But even as the crew retreated, I saw something that made my heart pound. There was a shape in the smoke. At first I thought it was just pareidolia, the human tendency to see faces and figures in random patterns. But this shape wasn't random. It was human-sized and human-shaped, and it was moving. "Do you see that?" Anna whispered beside me. "Yeah," I said. "I see it." The figure in the smoke walked along the edge of the fire, clearly defined despite the shifting, writhing nature of the smoke around it. It looked like a person made of shadows, darker than the smoke, but somehow also part of it. And as we watched, it stopped and turned toward us. I felt it looking at me. I know how crazy that sounds. A smoke figure doesn't have eyes. But I felt its attention on me like a physical weight, like someone staring at the back of your neck. Tommy raised his camera and started filming. "Chief, are you seeing this?" "Get it all," I said. "Every second." The shadow figure raised one arm. I saw it clearly, a distinct limb movement, and pointed at the sacred stone circle. Then it stepped directly into the blue flames and disappeared. The fire returned to normal orange color immediately. The temperature readings stabilized. The wind resumed its natural pattern. It was like someone had flipped a switch. "What the hell was that?" Anna asked. I didn't answer. I was thinking about my grandmother's stories, about shadow walkers who moved through fire without burning, who protected sacred places and punished those who disrespected the old ways. "I need to make a phone call," I said. Joseph Ridge Runner arrived the next day. He was a cultural liaison with the Cherokee Nation, based out of North Carolina, but covering sacred sites across the original Cherokee territory. I'd worked with him before on a project to identify and protect ceremonial areas within the forest boundaries. He was in his 60s, dignified and soft-spoken, with long gray hair tied back in a traditional way. I showed him the stone circle and the burn patterns. I showed him Tommy's footage of the shadow figure in the smoke. I told him about the impossible temperature readings and the fires that burned backward against the wind. Joseph watched the video 3 times without speaking. Then he looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "How much do you know about your heritage, Michael?" "My grandmother taught me some stories. Basic stuff." "Did she tell you about the Shadow Walkers?" "Yes, but I thought they were just myths." Joseph shook his head slowly. "Myths are truths wrapped in story. The Shadow Walkers are real. They're guardians of the sacred fire, protectors of the old ways. Your people, our people, have known about them for thousands of years. What do they want? That's the question, isn't it?" Joseph knelt by the stone circle, touching the stones reverently. "These fires forming a star pattern around a sacred site. It's a message. A warning, maybe. Or a call. A call for what? For respect. For remembrance. For restoration of balance." He stood up, brushing dirt from his knees. "The Cherokee people managed these lands with fire for millennia. We burned regularly, kept the forests healthy, prevented the massive fires that Europeans fear so much. But when your government began suppressing all fires 100 years ago, they broke an ancient agreement. They disrupted a cycle that had existed since the beginning of time." Anna had been listening quietly. Now she spoke up. "Are you saying these shadow things are angry about fire suppression?" "Not angry," Joseph corrected. "Disturbed. Awakened, perhaps. This drought. Do you understand how unusual it is? How severe? Climate is changing, and with it, the old spirits are waking. They see the world out of balance, and they're trying to restore it." Over the next 3 days, 17 more fires broke out across the highlands. Each one started at a Cherokee sacred site that we documented. Each one burned in patterns that defied physics. Perfect circles, spirals, geometric shapes visible only from the air. We fought them all, contained them all. But I could tell we were just reacting. We weren't solving the real problem. And then people started getting hurt. The first injury happened on day 4. A firefighter named Sarah Mendez was working a burn line when she suddenly screamed and dropped her Pulaski tool. She staggered backward, clutching her arm. When we got to her, her forearm was badly burned, second-degree burns in a perfect handprint shape. "Something grabbed me," she gasped, tears streaming down her face. "Something I couldn't see. It felt like ice at first. Then it burned." We evacuated her to the hospital. The doctors were puzzled by the burns. They were too uniform, too precise. "It looks like she pressed her arm against a hot stove shaped exactly like a hand," one doctor told me. But that's impossible. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I sat on the porch of my ranger station, watching the distant glow of fires on the horizon. There were 6 burning now, despite our best efforts. They were spreading closer to the towns in the valleys, threatening homes and lives. My radio crackled. It was Tommy. "Chief, you awake?" "Yeah, what's wrong?" "I'm at the northern perimeter of the big fire near Wilburn Ridge. Chief, there's something you need to hear." "What is it?" "Just come listen. Please." I drove up the mountain road with my heart hammering. When I reached Tommy's position, I found him standing at the edge of a meadow, staring into the darkness beyond our portable work lights. "Listen," he whispered. At first I heard nothing but the usual fire sounds, crackling, popping, the rush of superheated air. Then, beneath it all, I heard something else, singing, or chanting. Low voices speaking in rhythm, the words unfamiliar, but somehow deeply familiar at the same time. Cherokee. Someone was chanting in Cherokee language. "Where's it coming from?" I asked. "That's the thing, Chief. It's coming from the fire, from inside the fire." We stood there for 10 minutes, listening to voices that shouldn't exist, chanting words I didn't understand. Other crew members joined us, drawn by the sound. Everyone heard it. Everyone felt the same cold fear crawling up their spines. Then the chanting stopped. In the sudden silence, I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps crunching across burned grass, coming toward us from the darkness beyond our lights. "Everyone back," I ordered. "Back to the trucks. Now." But before we could move, they appeared. 3 of them this time, emerging from the darkness into the edge of our work lights. Shadow figures, human-shaped but made of something that wasn't quite solid, wasn't quite smoke. They were darker than the night around them, and where they stood the air shimmered like heat rising from summer pavement. They didn't have faces, not really, just suggestions of faces like seeing someone through frosted glass. But I felt them looking at us, studying us. One of them moved forward. As it walked, the burned grass beneath its feet turned green again, fresh and alive. The air around it distorted so badly that I could barely focus my eyes on it. It stopped 10 feet away, raised one arm, pointed directly at me, and spoke. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, vibrating through my chest rather than entering my ears. It spoke Cherokee, old Cherokee, formal speech that my grandmother would have recognized. I only caught a few words, but I understood the meaning. Remember, respect, restore. Then they were gone, fading back into the darkness like they'd never been there at all. The only evidence they'd existed was the path of green grass cutting through the burn scar, perfect footprints growing living plants in ash. "Chief?" Tommy's voice was shaking. "What the hell was that?" I thought about my grandmother's stories, about spirits who walked through fire, about the sacred responsibility of maintaining balance with the land, about ancient agreements that must not be broken. "That," I said slowly, "was a warning, and I think we are running out of time to figure out what they want." By day 7, we had 43 active fires burning across the highlands. The National Guard had been called in. We had helicopters, dropping water, bulldozers cutting fire lines, hundreds of firefighters working around the clock. And we were losing. The fires weren't just burning anymore, they were hunting. I know how insane that sounds, but there's no other word for it. They moved with purpose, changing direction to cut off escape routes, flaring up behind us to trap crews in boxes of flame. 3 more firefighters had been injured by invisible hands, burned by things they couldn't see. Joseph Ridge Runner and I stood on a rocky outcrop, looking down at the inferno spreading across the valley below. Anna was with us, her equipment packed and ready. We'd been ordered to evacuate. The fire chief said the situation was too dangerous, too unpredictable. "They're trying to clear the land," Joseph said quietly. "Return it to what it was before the settlements, before the fire suppression, before everything changed." "People will die," I said. "There are 3 towns in the valley. We have maybe 12 hours before the fires merge into one massive conflagration and roll downhill." "Then we need to talk to them," Joseph said. "Really talk to them. Make them understand that we're trying to restore balance, not fight against it." "How?" He looked at me intently. "You have Cherokee blood. You've spent your life working with fire, and you're standing on their sacred ground. If anyone can communicate with the Shadow Walkers, it's you." "I don't know how." "Your grandmother taught you. You just forgot." He reached into his bag and pulled out a bundle of dried tobacco wrapped in red cloth. "Traditional offering. And you'll need this." He handed me a small stone carved with symbols I recognized from my childhood. "Firestone, used in ceremonies. It's been in my family for 9 generations. Anna grabbed my arm. "Michael, you can't be serious. You're a scientist, a forest ranger. You're going to fight ghosts. With tobacco and magic rocks?" "You got a better idea?" I asked. "Because normal firefighting isn't working. Nothing we do makes any difference. These fires are controlled by something we don't understand, and it's going to kill people unless we try something different." She didn't have an answer. As the sun set, Joseph led me to the largest of the sacred stone circles, the one at the very center of the star pattern where this all began. The fire had reached this spot earlier in the day, but hadn't touched the circle itself. The flames formed a perfect ring around the sacred stones, burning everything but somehow avoiding the actual ceremony site. "What do I do?" I asked. "You offer. You ask. You listen." Joseph placed his hand on my shoulder. "Your grandmother knew these ceremonies. The knowledge is in your blood. Trust yourself. He and Anna retreated to a safe distance. I was alone in the stone circle, surrounded by a wall of fire that roared and crackled, but somehow didn't touch me. The heat should have been unbearable, but inside the circle the air was cool and still. I knelt in the center, unwrapped the tobacco, held the firestone in my left hand. I don't know the proper words, I said out loud. My grandmother tried to teach me, but I was young and stupid and thought the old ways didn't matter anymore. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry we forgot. I'm sorry we broke the agreements our ancestors made. The fire around me intensified, flames reaching 30 feet high, blocking out the darkening sky. But I wasn't afraid anymore. This felt right somehow, like coming home after a long absence. I understand now, I continued. You're trying to restore balance. The land needs fire. It always has. We made a mistake suppressing all burns, letting the fuel build up for 100 years. You're trying to fix what we broke. The flames began to move, swirling around the stone, circle like a tornado. And in the fire I saw them. Not 3 or 7, but dozens of shadow walkers, all circling me, all watching. But people live here now, I said. Innocent people who don't understand the old ways. If you burn the valley, you'll kill families, children. That's not balance. That's not justice. The fire tornado tightened, spinning faster. I could hear the chanting again, dozens of voices in Cherokee, speaking words I'd heard in my childhood, but never learned. Let me help, I said. Let us help. We can restore the traditional burning practices. We can manage the land the way our ancestors did. But you have to give us time. You have to trust us. One of the shadow walkers broke from the circling mass and approached. It was larger than the others, more defined, more present. The leader, I realized, the oldest and strongest of the fire spirits. It stopped directly in front of me, reached out one shadowy hand. I remembered my grandmother's words. Fire is not evil. Fire is life. But fire must be respected. I placed the tobacco offering in its hand. The shadow fingers closed around the bundle. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the shadow walker's form began to shift, becoming clearer, more solid. I could see features now, an ancient face, weathered and wise, with eyes like burning coals. When it spoke, I understood every word. You are young in years, but old in spirit, it said in Cherokee. You carry the knowledge in your blood, even if you have forgotten the words. The land cries out for proper care. The sacred fire must burn again, not hidden and suppressed, but honored and tended. I swear to you, I said, I'll make sure we do this right. We'll incorporate the traditional practices. We'll consult with the cultural keepers. We'll restore the cycle. The drought has awakened us. The heat and the dryness and the choking death of plants cry out for cleansing fire. We are bound by ancient law to answer that call. Then answer it through us. Work with us, not against us. Show us where to burn, when to burn, how to burn properly. Be our teachers. The shadow walker studied me for a long moment. Then it placed its other hand on my chest, directly over my heart. The touch was cold and hot at the same time, burning and freezing, unbearably intense. I gasped, but didn't pull away. Energy poured into me, knowledge, understanding, sensation. I felt the land itself, felt where it hurt and where it healed, where fire was needed and where fire would harm. I understood fire in a way I never had before, not as a tool or a threat, but as a living part of the world, as necessary as rain or sun. When the shadow walker removed its hand, I collapsed onto my hands and knees, gasping for breath. We accept your oath, it said. But know this, descendant of firekeepers. We are always watching. If you fail, if you forget, if you break the sacred trust, we will return. And next time, we will not be merciful. The fire tornado exploded outward in a burst of light and heat. I threw my arms over my head, certain I was about to be incinerated. Then silence, cool air, the smell of rain on dry grass. I lowered my arms and looked around. The fires were gone. All of them. Every single blaze across the highlands had extinguished in an instant. Where there had been roaring flames moments before, now there was only smoke drifting through darkness, and rain, gentle rain falling from a clear sky, soaking into the parched earth. Joseph and Anna ran to me. "Michael, are you okay? What happened?" I stood up slowly, my legs shaking. My chest hurt where the shadow walker had touched me, but when I looked down, there was no mark, no burn. "We made a deal," I said. "They're giving us a chance to do this right." I spent 2 weeks in the hospital after that night. The doctor said I had smoke inhalation and minor burns on my hands and face, though I didn't remember burning myself. They were more concerned about the psychological trauma. Multiple people were sent to talk to me, counselors, psychiatrists, even a priest. They all wanted to know what I'd experienced, whether I was having hallucinations or delusions. I told them the truth, mostly. I'd been caught in a fire circle. I'd had a near-death experience. I'd made peace with my Cherokee heritage. They seemed satisfied with that explanation, even if they didn't fully believe it. Tommy's video footage had mostly been lost. Something about electromagnetic interference corrupting the files. But the few frames that survived showed the shadow figures clearly enough that the official report mentioned unusual atmospheric phenomena possibly caused by extreme heat conditions. That was the government's way of acknowledging something happened without admitting what it actually was. The fires were classified as an extreme weather event. The official cause was listed as multiple lightning strikes during electrical storm with atypical characteristics. No mention of shadow walkers or Cherokee spirits. No mention of sacred sites or broken agreements. But things changed, even if the official reports wouldn't admit why. The Forest Service partnered with the Cherokee Nation to develop new fire management protocols. We brought in cultural keepers like Joseph to identify and protect sacred sites. We implemented traditional burning practices based on indigenous knowledge that had been managing these lands successfully for thousands of years. I became the liaison between the Forest Service and the Cherokee Nation. I spent months learning from elders, studying the old ceremonies, understanding the spiritual side of land management alongside the scientific side. My grandmother would have been proud. The burns on my chest where the shadow walker touched me never completely healed. I have a scar there now, faint but visible, a hand-shaped mark that tingles when fire danger is high. I can sense it days before the weather instruments confirm it, a burning sensation that warns me when conditions are right for wildfire. Anna says I developed some kind of meteorologist. Cal intuition from my experience. Joseph says the shadow walkers marked me as one of their own, gave me a piece of their awareness. I don't know which is true, maybe both. What I do know is that the fire behavior in the highlands changed after that summer. When we do prescribed burns now, following traditional Cherokee timing and methods, the fires are docile, controllable, almost friendly. The land accepts them, welcomes them. The burns are more effective, healthier for the ecosystem. But when someone tries to burn without proper respect, without following the protocols, strange things happen. Equipment malfunctions. Wind shifts unexpectedly. The fire behaves in ways that shouldn't be possible. The shadow walkers are still watching, still protecting, still waiting to see if we keep our promises. I've heard reports from other national forests in the southeast, the Great Smoky Mountains, Nantahala, Chattahoochee. Rangers there are seeing similar phenomena during drought years, impossible fires, shadow figures in the smoke, traditional Native American sites at the center of burn patterns. Whatever climate change has awakened, it's not limited to Virginia. The old spirits are waking up across the entire region, disturbed by the disruption of ancient cycles, demanding that we remember the old agreements and restore the balance. Last month, I got a call from a ranger in Tennessee. Young guy, scientific mind, didn't believe in anything supernatural. He'd found fire burn patterns forming geometric shapes around Cherokee sacred sites, temperature readings that made no sense, shadow figures walking through flames. I told him what I tell everyone now: listen to the land, respect the old ways, work with the spirits, not against them. He asked me if I really believed in ghosts. I thought about that night in the stone circle, about the shadow walker's hand on my chest, about the knowledge that burned itself into my soul. I believe in balance, I told him. I believe in respect. And I believe that some things are older and wiser than our modern science can explain. Before we hung up, he asked one more question. Are we safe? Can we contain this? I looked out my window at the highlands, at the green meadows where wild ponies grazed peacefully, at the sacred sites where shadows sometimes move, even on cloudless days. As long as we keep our promises, I said, as long as we remember. But sometimes, on hot summer nights when the drought is bad and the fire danger is extreme, I stand outside my ranger station and watch the distant mountains, and I see them there, on the ridges and in the valleys, shadows walking through the darkness, patient and eternal, waiting to see if we've really learned our lesson. The shadow walkers never left. They're still here, still protecting the sacred places, still tending the eternal fire that burns at the heart of the land. And now, so am I. My name is Elena Stormwind, and I've been a wildlife ranger for 12 years. I'm telling you this because what happened to me in the Cranberry Wilderness changed everything I thought I knew about the natural world. Before October 1986, I was one of those scientists who had an explanation for everything. Rational, logical. I studied nocturnal predators, bobcats, coyotes, the occasional black bear. I moved to West Virginia from Pittsburgh right after college because I wanted to be in the mountains, away from city noise and traffic. The Monongahela National Forest became my home, and I knew every trail, every bog, every hollow like the back of my hand. The Cranberry Glades area is special. It's a high-altitude bog, almost 4,000 feet up, where the ecosystem feels more like Canada than West Virginia. Sphagnum moss grows thick and spongy underfoot. Stunted spruce trees twist in strange shapes. The water in the bogs is so acidic that hardly anything can live in it. Local people say the native Seneca tribes considered it sacred ground. Later, during the Civil War, soldiers fought and died in these mountains. But I never paid much attention to ghost stories. I should have. It started the second week of October. The leaves were turning gold and red, and morning frost made the ground crunch under my boots. I was tracking a black bear family when I got a radio call from Jake Masterson, the local game warden. Elena, we got a situation. His voice crackled through static. Farmer named Bill Henderson just lost 3 cattle. Says something tore them apart. I sighed. Cattle deaths happen sometimes. Usually sick animals that wandered off and got attacked by opportunistic predators. Sounds like bear or coyote. I'll come take a look. That's the thing, Jake said. Bill says it don't look natural. When I arrived at Henderson's farm that afternoon, I understood what Jake meant. The 3 dead cattle lay in the pasture about 50 yards from the fence line. I've seen plenty of predator kills before, but this was different. The wounds were too clean, too precise. I knelt beside the first carcass, pulling on latex gloves. The bite marks on the throat showed massive canine teeth, at least 4 inches long. But the blood loss was wrong. Most of the blood was just gone, not splattered around like you'd expect, and there were no signs that coyotes or vultures had been feeding on the remains, which was unusual. Scavengers always show up. What do you think? Jake stood behind me, his weathered face tight with worry. I measured the paw prints in the soft mud nearby. My stomach dropped. 8 inches across, 4 toe pads and a heel pad, with clear retractable claw marks. Feline, but impossibly large. Could be a mountain lion, I said, though I didn't believe it. Mountain lions hadn't been confirmed in West Virginia for decades, and even if one had wandered this far east, the tracks were twice the size they should be. Bill Henderson, a barrel-chested man in his 60s, shook his head. I heard it last night. Sounded like a woman screaming. Came from every direction at once. My dogs wouldn't even go outside. Animals make strange sounds at night, I said automatically, using my professional voice. Owls, foxes, even bobcats can sound almost human. But my hands were shaking as I packed up my sample kit. That night, I sat in my cabin reviewing the photos I'd taken. The bite pattern kept bothering me. I pulled out my reference books on predator dentition and compared measurements. Nothing matched. The spacing was wrong. The depth was impossible for any known North American carnivore. My phone rang, the landline, since we had no cell service up here. "Elena, it's Dr. Ruth Blackstone." Ruth was a USDA veterinarian I'd worked with before. "Jake asked me to look at tissue samples from those cattle. Are you sitting down?" "What did you find?" "The tooth marks show smooth edges, like they were cut with surgical instruments. And Elena, there's something in the tissue samples I can't identify, some kind of residue that doesn't match any biological marker in my database." I listened to the silence on the line, broken only by static. "One more thing," Ruth said quietly. "I found human hair in the stomach contents of one animal, and fabric fibers. Denim, I think." My mouth went dry. "Human hair? I'm sending everything to the state lab. But Elena, be careful out there." After I hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time, watching fog settle into the valley below my cabin. Somewhere in that darkness, something was hunting, and it wasn't a bear. The next morning, I met Jake at the trailhead leading into the cranberry wilderness. He'd brought his rifle, which he'd never done before in all the years I'd known him. "My grandfather used to tell stories," Jake said as we hiked toward the kill site, "about devil cats in these mountains. Said they were spirits from the war, all that death and violence soaking into the ground, creating something that wasn't natural." "Jake, you don't actually believe—" "I'm just telling you what he said." His jaw was tight. "He said they hunted during October, when the veil between worlds gets thin." I wanted to laugh it off, but I couldn't. Not after what Ruth had told me. We set up motion-activated cameras around the area where the cattle had died. I used my best equipment, Reckonix trail cameras that could capture images in complete darkness. I also set up electromagnetic field detectors, though I told myself it was just to rule out underground power lines that might be affecting animal behavior. "What's that for?" Jake pointed at the EMF detector. "Scientific thoroughness," I said. We finished around noon and hiked back. The forest felt wrong somehow. Usually I could hear birds, squirrels, the rustling of small mammals in the underbrush. But today, everything was silent. Even the wind seemed to have stopped. "You feel that?" Jake whispered. I nodded. The hair on the back of my neck was standing up. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m, I heard it for the first time. The scream. It started low, almost below the range of hearing, a vibration I felt in my chest more than heard. Then it rose in pitch, becoming a shriek that sounded exactly like a woman in terrible pain. But it wasn't coming from one direction. It echoed from the north, then the south, then seemed to surround my cabin completely. I grabbed my flashlight and ran outside. The scream cut off instantly. The silence that followed was worse. I stood on my porch, shining my flashlight into the trees. And that's when I saw them. Eyes. Yellow eyes, reflecting my light. But they were at least 15 feet off the ground, high up in a massive oak tree. My hand shook. I tried to steady the beam. The eyes blinked once, slowly, then vanished. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. The next day, I checked the trail cameras. Every single one had malfunctioned. The images were corrupted, filled with static and strange electromagnetic interference. In a few frames, I could make out a dark shape, but it was blurred and distorted, as if the camera couldn't properly capture whatever it was photographing. The EMF detectors had gone crazy. The readings showed massive spikes in electromagnetic activity around midnight, right before I'd heard the scream. "This doesn't make sense," I muttered, reviewing the data on my laptop. Jake came by that afternoon with bad news. 2 hikers had been reported missing. A young couple from Ohio who'd been backpacking the Cranberry Backcountry Trail. Their car was still at the trailhead, but they'd never returned. We organized a search party. 10 volunteers combed the trails for 2 days. On the 3rd day, we found them. I wish we hadn't. They were in a clearing about 5 miles from the main trail. The scene looked like the cattle kills, but worse. So much worse. The wounds were identical. Surgical precision, massive bite marks, almost complete blood loss. But what made my knees buckle was their faces, frozen in expressions of absolute terror, and the tracks around them. Those impossible 8-inch paw prints leading to the base of a cliff face, then continuing straight up the vertical rock as if whatever made them could walk up walls. "That's not possible," I said. My voice sounded distant, like someone else was speaking. Jake stared at the tracks, his face gray. "My grandfather said they could climb anything, said they weren't bound by normal laws." One of the volunteer searchers, a young EMT named Marcus, pointed at something. "What's that?" "Claw marks, deep gouges in a hardwood tree trunk starting at 12 feet high and raking downward, 4 parallel lines, each at least an inch deep." I measured them with my tape measure, even though my hands were shaking so badly I could barely read the numbers. Whatever made those marks had claws over 6 inches long. We called in the state police. They took over the crime scene, treating it as a homicide investigation at first. But after the medical examiner arrived and saw the wounds, things got quiet. Too quiet. The police took our statements and told us to stay out of the area. That night, Ruth called me again. "The state lab called," she said. "They're classifying the cattle investigation as inconclusive and shutting it down." "What? Why?" "Because they don't know what else to do." She sounded exhausted. "The tissue analysis came back with biological markers that don't exist in any database. It's like whatever killed those animals is something science hasn't classified yet, or can't classify." After we hung up, I poured myself a whiskey and sat on my porch. The sun was setting, painting the mountains purple and gold. Beautiful, peaceful. Then the temperature dropped. In the span of maybe 30 seconds, it went from pleasant autumn evening to winter, cold. I could see my breath. The screams started again, closer this time, much closer. And in the tree line just beyond where my porch light reached, I saw movement. Something massive and dark, moving between the trees with impossible fluid grace. Then it stepped into the light. I've tried to describe what I saw that night, but words don't do it justice. Imagine a black panther, but wrong. Too big. Easily 8 feet long from nose to tail. Too tall. Its shoulder was level with my chest, and I'm 5'8". Its fur was so dark it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. But the worst part was its eyes. They glowed with their own light, an amber yellow that had nothing to do with my porch lamp. And there was intelligence in them. Not animal cunning, but actual thinking intelligence. It was studying me. We stared at each other for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Then it spoke. Not with its mouth, but directly into my mind. "You study hunters," the voice said. It sounded like gravel and broken glass. "Now you are hunted. Do you understand?" I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet. When I looked up again, it was gone. Just vanished, as if it had never been there. I ran inside and locked every door and window. I knew locks wouldn't stop that thing, but I had to do something. I sat on my couch with my rifle across my lap until dawn, jumping at every sound. The next morning I called Jake and told him everything. I expected him to think I'd lost my mind, but he just listened quietly. "It spoke to you," he said when I finished. "My grandfather said they could do that, when they wanted to toy with their prey. Jake, I'm a scientist. I don't believe in it." "You saw it," he interrupted. "You heard it in your head. What you believe doesn't matter anymore." He was right. Everything I'd built my career on, observation, evidence, rational explanation, was crumbling. But I couldn't just run away. Those hikers were dead. Bill Henderson's cattle were dead. And if I didn't figure out what was happening, more people would die. Ruth drove up that afternoon. She'd brought a colleague, Professor David Mills, who taught Civil War history at the university. He was a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and nervous hands. "Jake told me what's been happening," Ruth said. "I asked David to look into the history of this area." David spread an old map across my kitchen table. The Cranberry area saw significant fighting in 1863. Confederate and Union forces clashed in these mountains. Casualty records are incomplete, but we know at least 300 men died within a 5-mile radius of here. He pointed to a spot on the map. "Right here, where Bill Henderson's farm is now. There was a particularly brutal engagement, hand-to-hand combat. By all accounts, it was a massacre on both sides. What does that have to do with a giant panther? I asked. Maybe everything. David pulled out another document, this one older, written in faded ink. This is from a Seneca oral history, recorded in the 1920s. It talks about a spirit guardian that protected their hunting grounds. A great cat that could walk between the world of the living and the world of the dead. When the settlers came, when the violence of the war soaked into the land, the old legends say the spirit became corrupted, twisted. It started hunting people instead of protecting them. That's folklore, I said automatically. Is it? Ruth's voice was gentle. You saw something that can't exist, that speaks telepathically, that leaves biological markers we can't identify. Maybe it's time to consider that folklore and reality are closer than we thought. That night, we set up camp near the site where the hikers had died. It was a stupid, dangerous plan, but it was the only way to learn more. Jake brought his rifle. I brought mine. Ruth had her medical kit. David had his historical records and a lot of nervous energy. We built a fire and waited. The forest sounds died. Around 10 p.m., that complete silence I'd experienced before, like every living thing for miles had fled or was hiding. The temperature dropped. Our breath made clouds in the firelight. Then the screaming started. But this time, it wasn't just one voice. It was multiple voices, overlapping and harmonizing in a horrible chorus. They came from every direction, getting closer with each repetition. It's hurting us, Jake said, raising his rifle. Hunting behavior, cutting off escape routes. Dark shapes moved in the trees beyond our firelight. I counted at least 3 separate forms, all massive, all moving with that same impossible grace. One stepped into the light. It was the same creature from my porch, but now I could see it clearly. Its muscles rippled under midnight black fur. Its paws were the size of dinner plates, with claws that gleamed like polished bone. And its face, God. Its face was almost human in its expression. It was smiling. You came to us, the voice said in my head. Everyone jumped. They could hear it too. How considerate. Usually we must hunt. Tonight, dinner arrives on its own. We're not afraid of you, Jake said, though his voice shook. The creature laughed. The sound was like rocks scraping together. Everyone is afraid. Fear is the sweetest seasoning. 2 more creatures emerged from the darkness, flanking us. We were surrounded. The bog, I whispered, remembering my research. The acidic water, iron content. Get to the bog. We ran. God help us, we ran like rabbits from foxes. Behind us, the creatures screamed their hunting cries. I could hear them crashing through the underbrush, moving faster than anything that size should be able to move. The bog was 100 yards away, 75, 50. David tripped. He went down hard, crying out in pain. David! Ruth turned back. One of the creatures was on him in an instant. David screamed, a "so," and I'll hear in nightmares for the rest of my life. Then the scream cut off. Jake fired his rifle. The bullet hit the creature square in the chest, and for a moment, I saw the wound. But instead of blood, there was just darkness, like he'd shot a hole in reality itself. The creature didn't even flinch. Run! I grabbed Ruth's arm and pulled her toward the bog. We splashed into the acidic water, the cold making us gasp. The water came up to our knees, then our waists. Behind us, the creatures stopped at the water's edge. They paced back and forth, snarling, those intelligent eyes fixed on us. But they wouldn't enter the water. Clever prey, the lead creature said. But water does not stop us. It only delays. Then, as we watched in horror, one of the creatures began to change. Its solid form became translucent, then almost invisible, like smoke. It started to drift across the water toward us. It's becoming incorporeal, Ruth whispered. How do we fight something that's not even solid? I looked down at the bog water around us. It was dark, almost black, stained by centuries of decomposing vegetation and iron-rich minerals. The pH was incredibly acidic. I'd measured it dozens of times in my research. And iron disrupted electromagnetic fields. This thing, whatever it was, generated massive electromagnetic signatures. Maybe. When it gets close, I said, splash it with the bog water. Jake looked at me like I was crazy, but he nodded. The creature drifted closer, its translucent form rippling like smoke and wind. When it was about 6 feet away, I could see through it to the trees beyond. The temperature around us dropped so low that ice started forming on the surface of the water. You cannot hide forever, it said. We have hunted these mountains for decades. We have time. You do not. Now, I screamed. All three of us scooped up handfuls of bog water and threw it at the creature. The water hit its semi-solid form, and the effect was immediate. The creature shrieked, a sound of genuine pain, and its form solidified instantly. Where the water touched it, the fur smoked and sizzled like acid on flesh. It retreated to the shore, rejoining the other two creatures. All three stared at us with new respect and rage. Interesting, the lead creature said. The old earth remembers, the iron and acid, the blood-soaked ground. It protects you, for now. What are you? I called out. What do you want? The creature's eyes glowed brighter. We are what remains when violence dies. We are the hunting rage of 300 men who killed and died in these hills. We are the old spirit of this land, corrupted by human hatred and bloodlust. We are hunger and vengeance given form. The Civil War dead, Ruth whispered. They merged with the native spirit. David was right. We hunt because it is what we are. The creature continued. During the killing season, when the anniversary of our deaths approaches, we grow strong. We feed on fear, on violence, on the same energies that created us. And you who come to our territory with your guns and your arrogance, you are perfect prey. The other two creatures began circling the bog, their eyes never leaving us. I realized with growing horror that the water level was dropping. The bog was draining through underground channels, probably into the creek system below. We had maybe 15 minutes before we'd be on solid ground again, and then we'd have no protection. Elena, Jake said quietly, I can't feel my legs. This water is too cold. We have to move. He was right. Hypothermia was setting in. We couldn't stay here much longer, but if we left the water, those things would tear us apart. I looked at the sky. It was still dark, but dawn couldn't be more than an hour away. The creature had said it was stronger during the killing season during the anniversary. But what about daylight? Ruth, when did David say the battle happened? What date? She thought for a moment, her teeth chattering. Cheta, October 15th, why? What's today's date? The 14th. My heart raced. The anniversary is tomorrow. They're gathering strength for the peak, but after sunrise, after the anniversary passes, they'll be weaker. Clever prey understands, the creature said. But you will not see dawn. The water falls. Your body warmth fades. Soon you will stumble to shore seeking warmth, and we will be waiting. It was right. I could barely feel my feet anymore. Jake was shivering uncontrollably. Ruth's lips were turning blue. We had to do something. I looked at my rifle still clutched in my numb hands. Then at the bog water around us. Then at the creatures on shore. An idea formed. Desperate. Probably stupid. But it was all we had. Jake, Ruth, listen carefully. On my signal, we move toward the north shore, away from them. Use the last of the bog water as a barrier. Splash it in an arc as we move. It won't stop them, but it'll buy us seconds. Seconds to do what? Jake asked. To reach that stand of spruce trees. The wood there is iron-rich from the bog soil. If we can create a barrier of fallen trees, maybe soak them in bog water. That's insane, Ruth said, but she nodded. Let's do it. We waited until the water was knee-deep, then made our move. I scooped up as much bog water as I could and flung it in a wide arc. Jake and Ruth did the same. The creatures hissed and backed away from the acidic spray. We ran. Our frozen legs barely worked, but adrenaline pushed us forward. Behind us, the creatures recovered and gave chase. 30 yards to the trees. 20. 10. One of the creatures caught up to Jake. Its massive paw lashed out, claws extended. Jake dove forward and the claws missed by inches, gouging deep furrows in the ground instead. We reached the spruce grove. The trees here grew close together, stunted by the poor soil and harsh conditions. Jake and I grabbed a deadfall, a heavy tree trunk, and dragged it across the narrow gap between two living trees. Ruth splashed it with bog water from her canteen. The creatures stopped at this new barrier, and the lead one tested it with a paw, then jerked back as the iron-rich wood burned its supernatural flesh. Resourceful, it acknowledged. But temporary. This will not last. It was right. The barrier was weak, and there were gaps they could exploit. But we'd bought time. The sky was starting to lighten in the east. Dawn was maybe 30 minutes away. We had to hold on. Just hold on. The creatures began testing different approaches, looking for weaknesses in our makeshift fortress. One tried to climb over, but Ruth splashed it with bog water and it fell back. Another tried to push through, but the iron-rich wood burned whenever it touched. Time crawled. My hands shook from cold and fear. Jake reloaded his rifle, though we both knew bullets were useless. Ruth kept watch on the other angles, her medical training keeping her calm even in impossible circumstances. Then the lead creature stopped pacing. It sat down on its haunches, those intelligent eyes fixed on me. "You fight well," it said. "The old earth helps you. Perhaps this is proper. Perhaps we have forgotten the balance. We were created to protect this land before the violence corrupted us, before we became only hunger." "Then stop," I said. "Let us go." "We cannot. We are what we are." But the creature seemed to consider something. Behind it, the sky grew lighter. Pink and gold touched the clouds. "When the sun rises, we must return to the spirit realm. We cannot maintain form in daylight, except during the peak of our anniversary. You have survived one night. That is worthy of respect." "Will you keep hunting people?" I asked. "We hunt what enters our territory during our season. This has always been so. Those who show respect for this land, who understand its history and its sacrifices, these we may pass by. But those who come to kill for sport, who bring violence without honor, these we will always hunt. It is our nature." The sun broke over the horizon. The creatures began to fade, their solid forms becoming translucent again. But this time it wasn't threatening. It was like watching smoke dissipate in wind. "Remember what you learned here." The lead creature's voice grew faint. "Tell others. This land demands respect. The dead remember. And during October, we walk." Then they were gone. Just morning mist in the trees and birdsong returning to the forest. We collapsed against the spruce trees, shaking with exhaustion and relief and disbelief. "Did that really just happen?" Ruth whispered. I looked at the claw marks on the ground, the gouges in the trees, the acidic scorch marks where we'd splashed bog water. Physical evidence of an impossible night. "Yes," I said. "It really did." They found David's body the next day. The official report said it was a bear attack. The state police investigating the dead hikers eventually closed the case as animal predation by unknown species. No one wanted to write what we'd actually experienced. No one would have believed it anyway. Jake arranged for the area around Henderson's farm and the battle site to be quietly designated as ecologically sensitive wilderness. New regulations restricted access during October. The official reason was protection of endangered bog species. The real reason was to keep people away during the anniversary period. Ruth left West Virginia. She couldn't stay after what we'd seen. Last I heard, she was working at a veterinary clinic in Florida, as far from mountains and bogs as she could get. I stayed. Someone had to. Someone who knew the truth and could watch for signs. But I transferred to daytime-only research duties. I haven't been in those woods after dark since October 1986. I also can't hear high-pitched sounds anymore. permanent damage from the creature's screaming. My ears ring constantly, a souvenir of that night. I keep files now, detailed records of every unexplained predator incident in West Virginia and surrounding states. The patterns are there if you know what to look for. Areas with violent histories, battles, massacres, places where blood soaked the ground. Locations with unique geology, iron-rich soil, acidic water, electromagnetic anomalies. And timing, always October, sometimes other months, but always connected to anniversaries of historical trauma. Gettysburg, Antietam, Shiloh, Chickamauga. Every major Civil War battlefield shows similar patterns. Hikers who vanish, livestock killed with surgical precision, massive tracks that don't match any known species, local folklore about devil dogs or ghost panthers or screaming spirits. I've collected over 40 cases across 7 states. The official explanations are always the same: bears, coyotes, mountain lions, unstable people. But I know better. Historical trauma doesn't just fade away. Violence leaves scars on the land itself. And sometimes, under the right conditions, those scars become something else. Something that remembers. Something that hunts. I don't tell many people about this. Jake knows. A few other rangers who've had similar experiences. We share information quietly. We mark dangerous periods on calendars. We try to keep people safe without explaining why. Because how do you tell someone that the dead from America's bloodiest war are still here, fused with ancient spirits, walking as predators during October nights? How do you explain that there are things in our forests that transcend natural law? You can't. So you don't. You just do what you can to protect people and respect the land and hope that's enough. I still live in my cabin in the mountains. I still love this place, despite everything. But I'm more careful now. I pay attention to the old stories. I respect the boundaries that history has drawn in blood. And every October, when the leaves turn and the frost comes, I watch the woods from my porch. Sometimes, if the wind is right, I can hear screaming in the distance. See? Woman's voices, man's voices, all the agony of 300 soldiers who died violently in these hills, given form and teeth and terrible purpose. I make sure my doors are locked. I keep bog water in bottles by the windows, just in case. And I wait for dawn. If you're reading this, if you're planning to hike in the Appalachian wilderness during October, please listen to local warnings. Don't camp in areas marked as ecologically sensitive. Don't hunt on Civil War battlefields. Pay attention when your dogs won't go outside, when the forest goes silent, when the temperature drops for no reason. Some predators hunt for food. Others hunt for sport. But the ones in these mountains hunt for something else entirely. They hunt because it's what remains of them. All their fear and rage and violent death transformed into something that walks between worlds. The dead don't rest easy in Appalachia. And during the killing season, they don't rest at all. My name is Elena Stormwind. I'm a wildlife ranger, and I'm telling you this so you'll believe me when I say, stay out of the cranberry wilderness in October. Some territories belong to the dead, and they defend what's theirs. My name is Jonathan Whitecrow, and I've been a ranger in the Cherokee National Forest for 18 years. I've pulled lost hikers off cliffs, tracked kids who wandered away from campgrounds, and once carried a man with a broken leg 6 miles through a thunderstorm. I know these mountains like I know my own hands. I never believed in the old stories. My grandmother used to tell me about the moon singers, spirits that danced in the moonlight on Roan Mountain. I'd smile and nod, but inside I figured they were just coyotes. People hear things in the mountains at night and their minds fill in the blanks. That's what I told myself anyway. That was before September of 1983. Roan Mountain sits right on the Tennessee-North Carolina border, over 6,000 feet high. The top isn't covered in trees like most mountains. It's what we call a bald. Just grass and open sky like someone took a razor to the peak. The Cherokee considered it sacred ground. Revolutionary War refugees hid up there. It's the kind of place that feels old, if that makes sense. I'm 43 now, and I guess I look the part. Weather-beaten face, hands rough from rope work, the kind of tan you get from being outside every day for 2 decades. My mother was half Cherokee, which means I grew up hearing the stories and learning to track the old way, reading broken twigs and disturbed leaves like other people read newspapers. That September started normal enough. Warm nights for the season, the kind where you don't need more than a light jacket after sunset. The harvest moon was coming, getting fuller each night. We had the usual weekend hikers, college kids from Knoxville, families from Johnson City, serious backpackers doing the Appalachian Trail. Then Sarah Ridge, our helicopter pilot, mentioned something odd during our Monday briefing. Had a weird call Saturday night, she said, pouring coffee into a mug that, T said world's okayest pilot. Couple of hikers up on the Bald said they got lost for 6 hours. 6 hours? I looked up from the map I was marking. That's impossible. The Bald's not even half a mile across. That's what I said, but they insisted. Said they went up to watch the moonrise. Next thing they knew, it was almost dawn. I shrugged. Probably got drunk and passed out. They said they were walking the whole time, just couldn't find their way down. I'd been doing this job long enough to know that people get disoriented on mountains. The brain does funny things when you're tired and scared. I wrote it off. Then it happened again. Wednesday morning, 2 more hikers showed up at the ranger station. A man and woman in their 30s, both looking pale and confused. The man had a bandage wrapped around his left arm. "We need to report a missing time incident," he said. I'd never heard anyone phrase it that way before. Missing time? "We went up to the Bald around 8 p.m., the woman said. Her hands were shaking slightly. "We wanted to see the moon. It was so bright last night. We thought we'd take some pictures and come back down." "Okay," I said, pulling out an incident report form. "What happened?" "We don't know." The man unwrapped the bandage on his arm. "We were walking and then... It's like we blinked. Suddenly it was almost 5 in the morning. And I had this." The mark on his arm made me stop writing. It was a crescent moon shape, maybe 3 inches long, burned into his skin. Not like a fire burn. The edges were too perfect, too deliberate. The skin around it looked strange, almost silvery. "Did you burn yourself on something?" "No," he said. "It just appeared. We both lost 6 hours, and when we came back to ourselves, I had this mark, and we were in a completely different part of the mountain." I took photos of the mark with the station camera. Sked them standard questions. No drugs, no alcohol, both healthy adults with no history of seizures or blackouts. I sent them down to the hospital in Elizabethton, 50 miles away, and filed the report. That night, I pulled out my grandmother's old journals. She'd written down stories she'd heard as a girl, and I flipped through pages I hadn't looked at in years. "The moon singers come when the moon is full and the night is warm," she'd written in her careful handwriting. "They dance on the high places where earth meets sky. They sing songs that pull at your bones. If you hear them singing, don't follow the sound. If you see them dancing, close your eyes and pray. They're looking for people to join their dance, and once you start dancing with the moon singers, you might never stop." I closed the journal and told myself it was just a coincidence, but I couldn't stop thinking about that mark. By Friday, the moon was almost full. I was doing an evening patrol up on the Bald, checking the campsites, when I ran into Mary Sequoia. Mary was our cultural consultant from the Cherokee Nation. She was in her 60s, sharp as a tack, and knew more about these mountains than anyone alive. She was standing near one of the old stone circles that dotted the high meadow, the ones that archaeologists argued about. Some said they were Cherokee. Others said they were older. "You feel it?" she asked as I approached. "Feel what?" "The air. It's different tonight." I stopped and paid attention. She was right. The temperature was weird. Cold patches next to warm ones, like someone had left windows open in different rooms, and the usual night sounds were off. No crickets, no owls, just wind moving through the grass. "I heard about the hikers," Mary said, "the ones with the burns. Word travels fast. Jonathan, I need you to listen to something." She pulled out a small tape recorder from her jacket. "A backpacker left this at the station yesterday. Said he recorded it Wednesday night and it scared him so bad he packed up and left the mountain. She pressed play. At first, I heard nothing but wind. Then slowly, a sound emerged. Singing. Multiple voices harmonizing in a way that shouldn't have been possible. The pitch would rise and fall, and underneath it, I could hear what sounded like Cherokee words, but stretched out, layered over each other. The hair on my arms stood up. "That's not coyotes," I said. "No, it's not." Mary clicked off the recorder. "My grandmother warned me about nights like this. When the moon is full in September and the weather's warm when it shouldn't be, the boundary between worlds gets thin." "Mary, I know how you feel about the old stories, but something's wrong up here. Those burns those hikers had, I've seen them in old photographs. Cherokee people who got too close to sacred ceremonies they weren't prepared for." I wanted to argue, but a call came through on my radio. "Jonathan, this is Sarah. We've got a situation. Hiker called in from the Bald. Says his girlfriend climbed up on the rocks near the cliff edge and won't come down. Keeps saying she has to dance." I was moving before she finished talking. The cliff edge on the east side of the Bald dropped 400 feet straight down. If someone was up on those rocks in the dark. Mary followed me. We practically ran up the trail, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. The moon was rising, huge and orange on the horizon. It seemed brighter than it should be. When we got to the cliff area, I saw a young man standing at the base of a rock outcropping, calling up to someone. "Please, Amy, you're scaring me." I looked up and my heart stopped. A woman was standing on a rock ledge barely 2 feet wide, 40 feet up and 20 feet out from the cliff face. There was no way to climb up there without technical gear. The rock was smooth granite, no handholds. But she was dancing. Not stumbling, not carefully balancing. Dancing. Her arms moved in slow, graceful patterns. Her feet stepping in time to something I couldn't hear. Her eyes were open, but empty, reflecting the moonlight like mirrors. "How did she get up there?" I asked the boyfriend. "I don't know. We were walking and she started humming. Then she said she heard singing. She walked toward the rocks and the next thing I knew she was up there." "Amy," I called. "Can you hear me?" She didn't respond. Just kept dancing, getting closer to the edge with each step. I was reaching for my climbing gear when Mary grabbed my arm. "Listen." That's when I heard it. The singing. Quiet at first, then growing louder. Multiple voices coming from different directions around the Bald. The same harmonized sound from the recording, but now it was everywhere, making the air vibrate. The moonlight seemed to get brighter. I looked up and saw something that made no sense. The light was moving, bending, concentrating in specific spots around the meadow like spotlights on a stage, and in those pools of light, shapes were forming, translucent, human-shaped, made of moonlight itself. They were dancing. "Oh God," the boyfriend whispered. Amy's movements matched theirs perfectly. She was dancing with them, mimicking their steps even though she was 40 feet away and 40 feet up. The singing grew louder, and I felt it in my chest, in my teeth, in my bones. It wasn't just sound, it was vibration, frequency, something that bypassed my ears and went straight into my body. One of the moonlight figures turned toward us. I couldn't make out a face exactly, but I felt it looking at me, felt it seeing me. Mary was speaking in Cherokee, words I didn't understand, but recognized as prayer. The boyfriend had collapsed to his knees, covering his ears. The figures kept dancing, and Amy danced with them, and the moonlight got brighter and brighter until I had to squint against it. Then, like someone flipped a switch, it stopped. The singing cut out. The moonlight went back to normal. The translucent figures vanished like they'd never been there. Amy stopped dancing. For a moment she just stood there on that impossible ledge, 40 feet up with no way down. Then her knees buckled. She fell. I was already moving, but I knew I wouldn't make it. She was too far out, falling too fast. She landed on her feet in the grass, soft as a feather, right next to her boyfriend. Not a scratch on her. Not even breathing hard. She blinked, looked around in confusion, and said, "Where am I? What happened?" Why is it dark? On her right shoulder blade, visible through her tank top, was a fresh crescent moon burn, glowing faintly silver in the darkness. We got Amy down to the hospital. The doctors couldn't explain the burn or her missing memory. 6 hours gone, just like the others. The only difference was that we'd watched part of it happen. I didn't sleep that night. Kept seeing those figures made of moonlight, kept hearing that singing that lived in my bones. By morning, I'd made a decision. If this was really happening, if the old stories were true, I needed to understand it. I called David Nighthawk. David was an astronomer at East Tennessee State University, and more importantly, he was Cherokee and open-minded about things that didn't fit in scientific boxes. I'd met him at a tribal gathering a few years back. He arrived Saturday afternoon with Mary, both of them looking grim. I brought the light meter, David said, pulling equipment from his truck. And the audio recorder. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. Doing what exactly? I asked. Documenting, Mary said. The moon singers haven't appeared like this in 70 years. Not since the last time the tribes held proper lunar ceremonies up here. Something's brought them back. What changed? David pulled out a map covered in red marks. Light pollution. Look at this. In the last 10 years, development in the valley has doubled. They put in that shopping center in Elizabethton, the new hotel with the floodlights, the cell tower with the beacon. From up here, on a clear night, you can see light glow from 6 different towns. What does that have to do with everything? Mary interrupted. The moon singers are guardians. They protect sacred astronomical knowledge, Cherokee lunar ceremonies. They appear during specific moon phases to maintain the connection between earth and sky. But they need darkness, real darkness, the kind where you can see every star. And now there's too much light, I said slowly. So they're taking humans, David finished. People who come up here during the full moon. They're trying to, I don't know, preserve something, pass on knowledge, transform people into vessels for their ceremonies. That's insane. You saw them, Mary said quietly. You saw Amy dancing 40 feet up a sheer rock face. You tell me what's sane. We set up camp on the bald as the sun set. David positioned his equipment around the old stone circle. Mary prepared tobacco and other offerings, laying them out in traditional patterns. I checked my radio 3 times, making sure we could call for help. Not that help would arrive in time if something went wrong. The nearest backup was over an hour away, and helicopters couldn't fly at night on the mountain. We were truly alone. The moon rose at 8:47 p.m. I watched it clear the eastern ridge, huge and perfectly round. Within minutes, I felt the temperature start to fluctuate. It's beginning, Mary said. David's light meter started beeping. That's impossible. The ambient light level just doubled. The moonlight was concentrating again, forming those pools of brightness, but this time there were more of them. Dozens scattered across the meadow, and in each one a figure was taking shape. The singing started, quiet at first, then building. That same impossible harmony, vibrating through everything. They're speaking Cherokee, Mary said, her voice shaking. Old Cherokee. Ceremony words about the moon's phases, about the stars, about the dance between light and dark. The figures were becoming more solid. I could see details now, the suggestion of faces, of traditional dress, of hands that moved through the air like they were weaving invisible threads. One of them broke away from the others, moved toward us. As it got closer, the light around it intensified until I had to look away. When I looked back, it was standing right in front of Mary. It spoke. The sound was like the singing, but focused, shaped into words that bypassed language entirely. I understood it the way you understand music, not through meaning, but through feeling. Why do you poison our sky? Why do you hide our stars? Why do you break the sacred darkness? Mary answered in Cherokee, her voice steady even though I could see tears running down her face. She explained about the towns, the development, the lights that couldn't be turned off. The moon singer reached out. Its hand passed through Mary's chest, not violently, but like she wasn't solid. She gasped and staggered, and when it pulled its hand back, something glowed between its fingers, silver light, like captured moonbeams. Mary fell to her knees. "What did you do?" I shouted, moving toward her. "We take what we need to preserve. She will carry our knowledge now. She will remember what humans have forgotten." David was frantically recording everything, his hands shaking so badly the camera wobbled. More moonsingers were moving toward us now. The temperature dropped 30 degrees in seconds. My breath came out in clouds. "You will all dance," the closest one said. "You will all remember. You will all carry our light back to the dark places and teach your people to honor the sacred sky." I felt my feet leave the ground. Not falling up, just rising gently, like invisible hands were lifting me. David was floating too, and Mary, all three of us drifting upward while the moonsingers danced below us. The singing got louder, resonating through my entire body. We rose higher, 10 feet, 20. I could see the whole bald spread out below us, dotted with circles of concentrated moonlight. We were moving toward the cliff edge, the one where Amy had danced. "Jonathan!" David screamed. "Do something!" But what could I do? We were helpless, floating through the air while supernatural beings made of light decided our fate. I looked down and saw more hikers emerging from the trees, drawn by the singing. They walked like sleepwalkers, heading toward the circles of light. This wasn't just about us. The moonsingers were gathering everyone on the mountain. A memory hit me, my grandmother's voice, singing. She used to sing to me when I was little, old Cherokee songs about the moon and stars, songs for ceremonies I'd never attended because I'd been too modern, too skeptical, too sure that the old ways were just stories. I started singing. I barely remembered the words, and my pronunciation was probably terrible. But I sang the moon song my grandmother taught me, the one about honoring the night sky and the sacred darkness that lets us see the stars. The moon singer closest to me stopped dancing. It turned toward me, and I felt its attention like a physical weight. We hung there in the air, 30 feet above the ground, while I sang my grandmother's song with my rough, unpracticed voice. The other moon singers stopped too. The singing that had been overwhelming us faded. We began to drift downward, slowly, until our feet touched grass. The lead moon singer approached me again. This time, when it spoke, there was something different in its tone. Recognition, maybe. "You remember," it said. "The words are broken, but you remember." "My grandmother taught me," I said. "She knew the old ceremonies. She honored the moon." "Then you understand. You know what has been lost." Yes. And I did understand, suddenly and completely. These weren't monsters. They were guardians, desperately trying to preserve knowledge that was dying out. The light pollution wasn't just an environmental problem, it was passing centuries of astronomical knowledge, breaking the connection between Cherokee people and the sky. "But you can't just take people," I said. "You can't force this." "We are fading," the moon singer said. "When the last darkness is gone, we will be gone, and all the knowledge we protect will be gone too. The songs, the ceremonies, the understanding of how earth and sky speak to each other, all lost." Mary was getting up, touching her chest where the moon singer had reached through her. "They're scared," she said. "They're dying, and they're scared." David had his light meter out. "The light pollution is getting worse every year. At this rate, in 20 years, you won't be able to see the Milky Way from anywhere in the valley." "There has to be another way," I said. "What other way?" the moon singer asked. "Your people forgot us. They forgot the sacred darkness. They build lights that never sleep and forget to honor the night. Then we'll help them remember," I said. "Not by force, by teaching, by protecting the darkness that's left." "How?" I looked at David and Mary, saw the same thought forming in their eyes. "A dark sky reserve," David said. "We can apply for international dark sky designation. It would limit light pollution, require shields on existing lights, protect the natural darkness. And we can restore the traditional ceremonies," Mary added. "Work with the Cherokee Nation to get access rights for lunar observances. Teach people why the dark sky matters, both scientifically and culturally. Words, the moon singer said. Only words. No, I said. A promise. We'll give you back the darkness you need to survive. We'll teach people to honor the night again. But you have to stop taking people. You have to trust us. The moon singer was silent. Around us, the others had stopped dancing. The moonlight pools began to fade. If you fail, it finally said, we will return. And next time, we will take what we need. We won't fail, I said, with more confidence than I felt. The moon singer reached toward me. I didn't flinch, even though every instinct screamed to run. Its hand touched my forehead, not passing through this time, but making contact. Cold, so cold it burned. I saw things, not visions exactly, more like memories that weren't mine. I saw the Cherokee people climbing to this bald hundreds of years ago for lunar ceremonies. Saw them tracking the moon's phases, using the stars to mark seasons, passing down knowledge about the sky from generation to generation. I saw the first electric lights appear in the valleys, small and distant, saw them spread like a cancer year by year until the night sky began to disappear. I saw the moon singers fading, growing weaker as the darkness was stolen. Saw them trying desperately to preserve their purpose, their knowledge, their very existence. When the moon singer pulled its hand away, I was crying. I understand, I whispered. Then, you will help? Yes. The moon singer nodded. At least, I thought it did. Then it turned to the others and raised its hands. The singing started again, but different this time. Slower, sadder. It sounded like goodbye. One by one, the moon singers began to dissolve back into pure moonlight. The pools of concentrated light faded. The temperature returned to normal. The night sounds came back. Crickets, owls, wind in the grass. We stood there in the darkness, breathing hard, alive. Mary, I said, are you okay? She touched her chest again. I can see it now, the knowledge they gave me. Lunar calendars, star patterns, ceremony songs I've never heard before. It's all there, like someone downloaded it into my brain. Same here, David said. I understand astronomical patterns I've never studied. Cherokee star knowledge integrated with modern astronomy. They literally gave us what we need to teach others. I felt it too. A new awareness of the sky, the moon's pull, the way darkness and light balanced each other. And something else, a responsibility. We'd made a promise, and breaking it would have consequences worse than anything we'd face tonight. The hikers who'd been drawn toward the circles were waking up, confused and disoriented. Most of them had the crescent burns. All of them had lost hours they'd never get back. We spent the rest of the night helping them down the mountain, explaining as best we could. Most of them didn't believe us. Some did. All of them left the mountain changed. By the time the sun rose, we were exhausted. But we got to work immediately. David started drafting the Dark Sky Reserve application. Mary contacted the Cherokee Nation about ceremonial access and cultural education programs. I began documenting everything, the incidents, the evidence, the need for protection. It took 6 months. 6 months of meetings with county commissioners, environmental groups, tribal leaders, and community members. 6 months of explaining why darkness mattered, why light pollution was a problem, why protecting the night sky was worth the cost. Some people fought us. Business owners worried about security. Developers complained about restrictions. But slowly, we built support. David's astronomical data helped. Mary's cultural knowledge helped. The testimony from hikers who'd experienced the moon singers helped, though most were too scared to go public. What really turned the tide was when I showed them the photos. The translucent figures visible in night vision. The impossible light readings. The burns that no doctor could explain. Something's happening on that mountain, I told the county commission. Whether you believe in spirits or not, whether you believe in the old stories or not, something is wrong. And protecting the darkness might be the only way to fix it. In March of 1984, Roan Mountain was designated an International Dark Sky Reserve. Light pollution restrictions went into effect. Existing lights had to be shielded. New development had to follow dark sky-friendly guidelines. The Cherokee Nation secured ceremonial access rights. Mary started teaching lunar ceremony classes. David built an observatory on the Bald where people could learn about astronomy through both scientific and traditional cultural perspectives. The moon singers didn't appear again, at least not the way they had that September. But on clear nights during the full moon, if you're up on the Bald, you can sometimes hear singing carried on the wind, and the moonlight seems just a little bit brighter there, concentrated in ways that physics can't quite explain. I still work as a ranger, still do search and rescue, but things are different now. For one thing, my vision changed. In normal daylight, I'm fine. But when the sun goes down, I see better than I ever did before, can track by starlight, can spot details in darkness that should be invisible. The trade-off is that bright artificial lights hurt now. Hurt like looking at the sun. The doctors can't explain it. Just like they can't explain the faint crescent-shaped mark on my forehead where the moonsinger touched me. It's barely visible, just a slight discoloration. But I can feel it, especially during full moons. Mary became a respected teacher. She travels around the country now, speaking about traditional astronomical knowledge and the importance of preserving dark skies. The knowledge the moonsinger gave her proved to be accurate. Astronomers verified her lunar calculations, her star charts, her understanding of celestial cycles. David's observatory became famous. It's one of the few places where you can learn astronomy from both scientific and indigenous perspectives. He gets visitors from around the world, and the missing person incidents stopped. No more lost time, no more impossible burns, no more hikers found in places they couldn't have reached. But I wonder sometimes what would have happened if we'd failed, if we hadn't gotten the Dark Sky Reserve approved, if the light pollution had kept spreading. Would the moonsingers have taken more people? Would they have become dangerous, desperate, or would they have simply faded away, taking all that ancient knowledge with them? I go up to the Bald sometimes at night, especially during full moons. I bring tobacco like Mary taught me, and I sing the songs my grandmother sang. My pronunciation is better now. Mary's been teaching me. And sometimes, just sometimes, I see shapes in the moonlight, translucent, dancing. They never approach anymore, never speak. They just dance, preserving their ceremonies, maintaining their watch over the sacred darkness we almost destroyed. Light pollution is spreading across Appalachia. I get calls from rangers in other parks, other mountains. Strange disappearances during full moons. Hikers found with burns they can't explain. Singing heard in the night that isn't quite coyotes. We share what we learned. Help them apply for dark sky designations. Teach them about the importance of protecting natural darkness. Try to fix things before they get as bad as they did here. Because the moonsingers aren't the only ones out there. Every Cherokee sacred site has guardians, Mary says, spirits that protect different aspects of natural knowledge. And all of them are struggling as the modern world encroaches on the wild places. The moonsingers were just the first to reach their breaking point. I keep a map in my ranger station now, red pins marking reports of similar incidents across the southeast. There are more every year. Mountains where the night sky is disappearing, where ancient guardians are waking up to find their sacred darkness stolen. We're trying to help them all, trying to preserve what's left of the natural night. But sometimes I worry we're too late, that too much has already been lost. Then I go up to the Bald on a clear night and I look up at the stars. Thousands of them, visible now that the light pollution is controlled. And I hear the moonsingers dancing in their circles of moonlight. And I remember that we saved something precious. We kept a promise. We gave them back their darkness. I just hope it's enough, because the moon is always full somewhere. The night is always falling. And all across these mountains, in the few dark places that remain, guardians are watching and waiting, hoping we remember what we almost forgot. That darkness isn't something to fear and destroy. It's sacred. It's necessary. It's where we go to see the stars, to connect with something older and bigger than ourselves, to to understand that we're part of a universe that doesn't end at the edges of our artificial light. The moon singers taught me that. I just hope I can teach it to enough other people before it's too late. Before the last darkness disappears, and the guardians have no choice but to take back what we stole. My name is Rebecca Thornfield, and I've been a ranger with the U.S. Forest Service for 14 years. Before that, I studied anthropology at UNC Chapel Hill, wrote my thesis on Appalachian burial customs, and spent 2 summers volunteering at Cherokee archaeological sites. I thought I knew everything about death in these mountains. I was wrong. People ask me all the time if I've seen anything strange out here in Pisgah National Forest. Usually I laugh it off. Bears getting into coolers, hikers swearing they saw Bigfoot, teenagers trying to scare each other with ghost stories around campfires. In 14 years, I'd cataloged every rational explanation for every weird occurrence in these woods, but I'd never heard of bone collectors until the winter of 1988. My job is protecting archaeological sites, mostly Cherokee burial grounds and a few Civil War casualty locations scattered throughout the Black Balsam Knob area. It's lonely work, especially in February when ice storms make the roads impassable and I'm the only person for 30 miles. Just me, my radio, and thousands of acres of frozen rhododendron thickets. I actually prefer it that way. Quiet, peaceful. The dead don't complain. The morning everything changed started normal enough. Temperature was hovering around 20 degrees and fog was rolling through the heath balds in thick gray waves. I was making my weekly rounds, checking the burial mounds for signs of disturbance. Grave robbers are always a problem. People looking for artifacts to sell on the black market. The first site looked fine. So did the second. But when I reached the third mound, an important Cherokee burial site dating back to the 1700s, I stopped walking. Something was wrong. The ground around the mound had been excavated, not just disturbed, but systematically dug up with surgical precision. Soil removed in perfect layers, and the bones. The bones were arranged in patterns across the frozen earth, complex geometric shapes I didn't recognize. I knelt down, my breath making clouds in the cold air. The bones showed no tool marks. None. When you excavate remains, you leave scratches, chips, signs of disturbance. These bones looked like they'd been separated at every joint, as cleanly as a surgeon's scalpel could manage. But we were 30 miles from the nearest road, the ground was frozen solid, and there were no footprints, no tire tracks, no signs anyone had been here at all. I pulled out my camera and started documenting everything. That's when I noticed the temperature. It should have been freezing. My truck thermometer had read 19 degrees. But here, around the disturbed burial site, I could see my breath less clearly. The ground felt warmer under my gloved hands. My radio crackled. "Rebecca, you copy?" I grabbed it. "Yeah, I'm here. Just checking in. Roads are getting worse. You might want to head back before you get stuck out there." "Copy that. I'm at Site 7. We've got a situation." "What kind of situation?" I looked at the bones arranged in patterns I couldn't understand, at the perfectly excavated earth, at the complete absence of any logical explanation. "I don't know yet," I said, "but I'm going to need help." Dr. Samuel Kingbird arrived 3 days later, after the roads cleared enough for travel. He was a Cherokee Nation archaeologist I'd worked with before, smart, careful, respectful of both scientific method and traditional knowledge. His grandmother had been a storyteller, and he knew things about these mountains that weren't in any textbook. Dr. Lisa Hartwell came with him, forensic anthropologist from Duke, specialist in bone analysis. I'd requested her specifically because I needed someone who could explain what I was seeing. "Jesus," Lisa breathed when she saw the site. "Rebecca, when did you say this happened?" "Sometime in the last week. I was here 7 days ago and everything was normal." She knelt by the bones, pulling out a magnifying glass. Samuel walked the perimeter slowly, his face unreadable. "The joint separation is perfect," Lisa said after a minute. "I mean, perfect. No nicks, no scratches, no signs of cutting or sawing. It's like something just pulled the bones apart at their natural connection points." That's not possible with any tools, I said. Right? Not any tools I know of. She picked up a femur, turning it in her gloved hands. And look at this arrangement. These aren't random. Someone positioned these bones very deliberately. Samuel called out from the edge of the site. Rebecca, come look at this. I walked over. He was pointing at one of the bone arrangements. Several small bones from a hand and wrist, positioned in a specific pattern. That's Cherokee syllabary, he said quietly. The bones are spelling out a word. What word? He was quiet for a moment. Guardian. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the February cold. My grandmother used to tell stories, Samuel continued, not looking at me, about spirits who protected the ancestors' resting places. She called them bone speakers, said they could communicate through the remains of the dead, that they sorted and organized bones according to rules we don't understand. That's folklore, I said, but my voice wasn't as steady as I wanted it to be. Is it? He gestured at the site. Can you explain this any other way? Lisa called us over. She'd set up her portable ground-penetrating radar unit, running scans of the burial mound. The screen showed something impossible. Hollow spaces deep underground where solid earth should be. Cavities that hadn't existed on my last scan a month ago. The whole mound is like Swiss cheese inside, she said. Something has been excavating underground, tunneling through frozen earth that should be hard as concrete. I took a reading with my thermometer. 42 degrees around the disturbed A. Rhea 19 degrees everywhere else. We need to document everything, I said, trying to sound professional. Full excavation protocol. Photography, measurements, soil samples. The clicking started then. It was faint at first, like bones tapping together, rhythmic, coming from underground. We all froze. Click, 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 click. Tell me you heard that, Lisa whispered. Click, 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 click. Samuel's face had gone pale. That's the pattern, the syllabary pattern. Something underground is clicking out Cherokee words. What's it saying? I asked. He listened for a long moment. The clicking continued, patient and deliberate. Ours, he finally translated. These are ours. The ground beneath our feet trembled slightly, just enough to feel. Lisa grabbed her equipment. We need to leave, right now. I should have listened to her, but I've always been stubborn, always needed to understand things. I pulled out my camera and started taking pictures of the bone arrangements, walking around the site to get different angles. That's when I saw it through the viewfinder. The bones had moved. Not much. Just slightly. The geometric pattern was different than it had been 30 seconds ago. I lowered the camera, looked with my naked eyes. The bones looked the same as before. I raised the camera again. Through the lens, they were in a completely different arrangement. Something's wrong with my camera, I said. Samuel took it from me, looked through the viewfinder, then at the site with his own eyes. His hands started shaking. It's not the camera, he said. The bones are moving between moments, between when we look and when we don't. That's impossible. The clicking got louder, more insistent. Click, 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 click. It's angry, Samuel translated. We're disturbing something we shouldn't be disturbing. The fog around us started, moving wrong. Instead of drifting with the wind, it began spiraling around the burial site, forming a slow circle that tightened and tightened. Lisa screamed. I spun around. She was pointing at the ground near the excavated mound. Skeletal fingers were emerging from the frozen earth. Not slowly, not struggling. They just rose up through solid soil like it was water. Then a whole hand. Then a forearm made of yellowed bone. The hand opened and closed as if testing its grip. Then it pressed down against the earth and began pulling the rest of itself up. Run, I said. Run. We sprinted for the trucks, the clicking following us, getting faster and faster until it sounded like 100 bones rattling together in rhythm. Behind us I heard the sound of earth breaking, of something large pulling itself up from underground. I made the mistake of looking back. 3 complete skeletons were standing at the burial site. Perfectly articulated, moving with fluid grace despite having no muscles or tendons. They weren't chasing us. They were watching us leave. The tallest one raised its hand. the clicking stopped. In the sudden silence, I heard Samuel whisper a prayer in Cherokee. We didn't stop running until we reached the trucks. We set up a temporary camp at the ranger station, 5 miles from the burial site. Close enough to monitor, far enough to feel safe. At least, that's what we told ourselves. Nobody slept that first night. We sat around my space heater, drinking bad coffee and trying to make sense of what we'd seen. Skeletons don't walk, Lisa kept saying. They don't. There's no mechanism, no muscles to contract, no tendons to pull bones, no nervous system to coordinate movement. It's physiologically impossible. We all saw it, I said quietly. Mass hallucination, carbon monoxide, something in the water. Samuel shook his head. You don't want to believe because believing means accepting that everything you know is wrong. Trust me, I understand. But my grandmother's stories were true. The bone speakers are real. Speakers? Plural? I asked. The bones aren't individual entities. They're parts of something larger. A guardian spirit that uses the remains of the ancestors to manifest physically. It's been here for centuries, protecting these burial grounds. Why now? Lisa demanded. Why reveal itself after all this time? Samuel pulled out his phone, showed us a series of weather reports. Temperature records for the past 5 years. See this pattern? Warming winters, earlier springs, freeze-thaw cycles that didn't used to happen. The burial mounds are being damaged by climate change. The preservation conditions are changing. So the spirit woke up to protect them, I said, or was forced to act because the threats got worse. Samuel looked at me. How many archaeological teams have surveyed this area in the last 2 years? 4, including us. 4 teams disturbing grounds that have been relatively untouched for decades. 4 teams digging, scanning, cataloging, removing artifacts. From the spirit's perspective, we're the grave robbers. My radio crackled with static, then went silent. I picked it up, tried to call the main station. Nothing but interference. And underneath it, that same rhythmic clicking. It's in the radio signals now, Lisa whispered. Over the next 3 days, things got worse. We returned to the site each morning with more equipment, trying to document and understand what was happening. Each time we found more bones excavated and arranged in complex patterns. The geometric shapes grew larger, more intricate, and each time they spelled out messages in Cherokee syllabary. Leave, hours, protect. The skeletons appeared more frequently, sometimes just standing at the edges of our vision, watching. Other times, actively working, digging with their bone hands through frozen earth that should have been impossible to penetrate. Lisa started documenting everything obsessively. She'd spend hours analyzing single bone fragments, taking measurements, running tests. She stopped sleeping, stopped eating much, just worked with a manic intensity that scared me. Lisa, I said on the 4th day, you need to rest. I need to understand. Her eyes were bloodshot, her hands shaking. There's an organizational system. The bones are being sorted by something. Age, sex, tribal affiliation, I don't know. But there's a pattern. I just need more time. Samuel pulled me aside. This happened to my grandmother's cousin, in the stories. They call it bone fever. The spirit influences people, makes them obsessed with the remains. It's how it protects the burial grounds, by making us too focused on the bones to think about anything else. How do we stop it? We don't. We leave, or we go deeper, until we can't come back. But leaving wasn't an option. Not just because this was my job, but because I needed to know the truth. 14 years of thinking I understood these mountains, and now everything I thought I knew was wrong. That night, it got personal. I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of clicking outside my cabin. I grabbed my flashlight and opened the door. The yard was full of bones, not arranged in patterns, just scattered everywhere like someone had dumped boxes of skeletal remains across my property. Skulls staring up at the stars, ribs forming strange arches, finger bones spelling out words I couldn't read in the frost. And standing at the edge of the tree line, barely visible in my flashlight beam, was a skeleton wearing traditional Cherokee burial regalia, beaded collar around its neck bones, copper ornaments hanging from its ribs, A headdress made of feathers and small bones balanced impossibly on its skull. It raised one skeletal hand and pointed at me. The clicking started again, and this time I understood it. Not the words, I didn't speak Cherokee, but the meaning behind them, the emotion, the anger. This wasn't just a guardian spirit protecting burial grounds. This was something that had watched its people removed from these lands, seen their burial sites disturbed by generations of settlers and archaeologists, witnessed climate change threatening the preservation of these sacred remains. It was tired of watching, tired of having its warnings ignored. And now it was done warning. The skeleton took a step toward me, then another. The bones in my yard began to move, sliding across frost-covered ground toward the figure in the trees. Assembling, organizing, building something larger. I ran inside and locked the door, knowing it wouldn't help if the thing decided to come through. My phone rang. Samuel. Rebecca, get to the ranger station, now. Bring Lisa if you can find her. What's happening? The spirit is manifesting fully. It's gathering all the remains from multiple burial sites. Whatever it's building, we need to stop it before... The line went dead. I grabbed my keys and ran for my truck, praying I wasn't already too late. The ranger station was dark when I arrived. No lights, no heat, no sign of Samuel or Lisa. Just my truck's headlights cutting through fog that had gotten impossibly thick. I found Samuel's vehicle parked at an angle, driver's door hanging open. His phone was on the ground, screen cracked. No blood, no signs of struggle, just gone. Samuel, I shouted into the fog. Lisa! The clicking answered me from everywhere at once. Not rhythmic anymore. Chaotic, aggressive, like 1,000 bones chattering against each other. I followed the sound into the woods, my flashlight barely penetrating the thick fog. The temperature kept fluctuating wildly, freezing one moment, almost warm the next. My breath came in ragged clouds. I found them at the original burial site. Samuel and Lisa were on their knees in front of the largest skeleton I'd seen yet, nearly 7 feet tall, assembled from bones that came from multiple individuals. It wore the burial regalia, but also had bones from different time periods. ODS incorporated into its structure. Cherokee remains mixed with what looked like Civil War casualties, creating something that transcended individual identity. This was the guardian, the bone collector, built from all the ancestors it protected. Rebecca, Lisa said without looking at me. Her voice was dreamy, distant. It's beautiful. Can you see the organizational pattern? Every bone has its place. Every remain contributes to the whole. Lisa, we need to go. I can't. I'm needed here. We all are. She smiled, and it was wrong. The guardian needs living bones, too, to understand what it's protecting, to bridge the gap between death and life. Samuel turned to look at me, and I saw tears frozen on his cheeks. I'm sorry, Rebecca. I tried to fight it, but the bone fever is too strong. It wants us. It wants our bones added to its collection. The guardian skeleton tilted its skull toward me. The clicking resolved into something almost like speech. Not words I could hear, but meaning I could understand directly in my mind. These are mine. These mountains, these bones, these ancestors. I have protected them for centuries while you, living ones, disturb and destroy. Climate changes. Diggers come. Disrespect spreads like rot. Now I will preserve them my way, forever, and you will help. I felt the pull then, a strange sensation in my bones, like they wanted to move independent of my body, like something was testing my skeleton, seeing if it could control me the way it controlled the remains of the dead. No, I said out loud. No, I won't let you. You have no choice. Living or dead, all bones answer to me. My left hand started moving on its own, fingers twitching and curling in patterns that matched the guardian's skeletal hand movements. I watched in horror as my bones began responding to its will. Lisa laughed, the sound high and broken. Don't fight it, Rebecca. It's easier if you don't fight. The guardian took a step closer. Around us, dozens of smaller skeletons emerged from the fog, surrounding us in a circle, all watching, all waiting. I tried Taz. I remember everything Samuel had told me about Cherokee burial customs, about respect and protocol, about proper ancestor veneration. Wait, I said, forcing the word out even as my hand kept moving against my will. You're right. We've been disturbing these sites, but not because we wanted to disrespect the ancestors. Your intentions matter not. Your actions cause harm. Then let me fix it. Let me help protect these burial grounds the right way. Legal protection under NAGPRA, Cherokee Nation Oversight, Climate Monitoring and Preservation Funding. Words, promises, lies. I have heard them before. I know, but I can make it happen. I have the authority. I can reclassify these sites, get federal protection, ensure no one disturbs them again without proper consultation. The pressure on my bones eased slightly. The guardian's skull tilted, considering. And if I release them? It gestured at Samuel and Lisa. You will keep this promise? Yes, I swear it. On my own bones. The clicking around us intensified, dozens of skeletons communicating in their bone language, debating, deciding. Finally, the guardian spoke again. Very well. But know this, Rebecca Thornfield. I am bound to these grounds. I will be watching. If your protection fails, if you break your oath, I will collect what is owed. Starting with your bones. The pressure on my skeleton released all at once. Samuel and Lisa collapsed, gasping. The fog began to thin. But as the guardian turned away, it reached out one skeletal hand and touched my wrist. Not hard, just a brush of bone against skin. I felt something change inside me. A connection formed, a mark left. What did you do? I whispered. Ensured you remember. Ensured you feel what I feel when the burial grounds are threatened. Your bones will tell you when the ancestors are disturbed. This is the price of your promise. Then it was gone, dissolving into fog and shadow. The smaller skeletons followed, sinking back into the earth like they'd never been there. I helped Samuel and Lisa to their feet. We stumbled back to the ranger station. In silence, none of us quite ready to talk about what had happened. As we walked, I felt the first twinge of pain in my hands, a deep ache in my bones that I knew would never fully go away. The price of keeping my promise had already begun. It took 3 months to get all the paperwork through, but I kept my promise. The burial sites at Black Balsam Knob are now under full NAGPRA protection with Cherokee Nation consultation required for any archaeological work. We installed climate monitoring systems and secured federal funding for preservation efforts. No excavations without traditional protocols, no research without proper blessings. Samuel returned to his work with the Cherokee Nation, but he calls me every week to check in. Lisa took a sabbatical and is seeing a therapist who specializes in trauma. She doesn't talk about what happened, but she's stopped doing field work involving burial sites. As for me, I still work these mountains, still patrol the same trails and check the same locations. But everything's different now. The arthritis in my hands got worse fast. My doctor can't explain why someone my age has bone density loss like I'm 70. Some days I can barely grip my steering wheel. Some days the pain makes me gasp. But worse are the feelings I get now. The guardian kept its word about marking me. I can sense when burial sites are disturbed anywhere in the region. It's like a pulling sensation, like my bones trying to migrate toward the disturbance. And when I dream, I sometimes see through the eyes of skeletons, watching over the dark earth where the ancestors rest. I visited Maria Sawnuki, a Cherokee elder Samuel recommended. She gave me traditional prayers to say and taught me proper protocols for working around burial grounds. She also told me stories about others who'd been marked by bone spirits over the centuries. You're not the first, she said, and you won't be the last. The guardians are waking up throughout the Appalachians. Climate change is threatening cultural sites everywhere, and the old protections are stirring. How many others are there? She smiled sadly. More than you'd want to know. Different spirits for different places. Bone collectors are just one type. There are others who protect sacred groves, fishing sites, old village locations. The land remembers, Rebecca, and the spirits don't forget. Last week, I got a call from a ranger in Tennessee. He'd found bones arranged in geometric patterns at a Cherokee site near the Smoky Mountains. The description matched what I'd seen. I told him about proper consultation protocols, about respect and promises, about the price of disturbing grounds that have guardians watching over them. I didn't tell him about the nightmares, about waking up with my bones aching like they're trying to pull free of my skin, about the clicking sounds I sometimes hear in the static of my radio, messages I can almost understand. The guardian is still there in those mountains, still watching, still sorting and organizing the bones of the ancestors according to rules older than any living human can remember. And I'm connected to it now, marked, a living bridge between the world of flesh and the world of bone. Some nights when the pain in my hands gets really bad, I go back to that burial site. I sit in the dark and listen to the clicking underneath the earth. The guardian knows I'm there. I can feel its attention on me like cold fingers tracing my skeleton. I'm keeping my promise, I tell it. The sites are protected. The ancestors are safe. The clicking responds, and somewhere deep in my marked bones, I understand its meaning. For now. But I am eternal, and I will always be watching. People still ask me if I've seen anything strange in these mountains. I tell them no. Tell them it's just wilderness, just nature, just old burial grounds that need proper respect and legal protection. I don't tell them about the bone collectors, about the guardian spirits waking up throughout the Southeast, about the price I pay every day in aching bones and disturbed dreams. Some warnings aren't meant to be spoken out loud. Some truths are better left buried. But if you ever find yourself near an old burial ground and you hear clicking sounds from underground, if you see bones arranged in patterns you don't understand, if you feel your skeleton responding to something ancient and angry, remember that the dead have guardians, and those guardians are done being patient with the living. My name is Rebecca Thornfield. I'm a ranger with the U.S. Forest Service. I protect archaeological sites in the North Carolina mountains, and I carry the mark of the bone collector in my very bones.